not totally accurate, but you brought up Trevor Lawrence, and I want to ask you about Trevor Lawrence. A statement somebody gave me was Trevor Lawrence will absolutely not bust. Do you agree with that?
No. I mean, right, there's definitely still the possibility that he busts. I do think, though, that when you think about Trevor Lawrence, could it have been any worse last year? Like, you think back to last year, he didn't have any weapons. The front office absolutely whiffed on the draft. They took ETN, he got hurt. So the only player that was supposedly good in that draft class got hurt. They drafted two guys who were hurt, which I thought was just brilliant. I mean, anytime you're trying to build around a young quarterback, definitely draft some guys who are injured. Just an awful draft. They had one of the worst coaches probably in the history of the NFL. One of the most dysfunctional front offices and coaching staffs that you could even conceivably assemble. No weapons, and the kid stood in there for 17 games and threw over 60% completion percentage and was unable to throw touchdowns. That's not a surprise. So I do see the possibility that he's good, and I do think he will be, but my, oh my, he's not out of the woods yet.
Yeah, it's an interesting one for Trevor Lawrence because nobody really has the balls to not say he's a top 10 dynasty quarterback. But the reality is that we're one bad season away from him being ranked, QB 15, QB 16. And the only thing that can really save him at that point is kind of what happened to Tua, where he gets these weapons, he gets this new coach, this revitalization happens, and suddenly it's like confidence is restored. But Jacksonville has been a difficult place to play for the longest time. When you look at Trevor Lawrence, though, it was the money throws, it was the volume. Those are the two things that you hang your hat on. I love Christian Kirk this year as an offensive weapon just because I don't think there's anything else there, and Jacksonville's going to be losing in a lot of games.
Yes.
But like you said, he's definitely not outside of the woods yet. I mean, finishes the QB 22 last year, 12.7 fantasy points per game. Not that great looking at his pure passing metrics on Player Profile in terms of, passing accuracy versus different, coverage types. So for people, if you're a believer, if you're a truther, and I realize if we're going to extend ourselves to best case scenario, this would be the guy that you would allow yourself to do this with, because he is the guy that had the profile that seemed infallible, right? Like this seemed like this is a generational talent. It's just funny how quick that narrative changes.
Yeah, I almost have like 0 shares of these guys in Dynasty. I mean, when in other words, the only time I ever drafted them was in the rookie draft when they were there, right? I don't think I took a single share of Lance, Fields, or Lawrence in a startup just because they were so highly priced. So I think there's definitely, you just never know. I mean, we've seen this story so many times. I mean, people have revisionist history. They go back and say, we knew this guy sucked, or Josh Rosen, Sam Darnold, you can go back forever.
Yes.
And it's like, you just see Baker Mayfield,
Yes.
I mean, all of them. It's not, so everybody says, and this is the fallacy in Dynasty is, quarterbacks are basically the easiest. Just draft them, they last for 15 years. It's like, no, they don't. No, they don't. The one thing they do is they at least hold some value if they're drafted in that sort of the top 10, except for Josh Rosen, which I suppose even proves the point that even that's not true necessarily. But generally, those guys get multiple years to sort of prove themselves. Yes. And oftentimes, once you feel like you're out on them, you can find someone in your league who's like still sort of in, and the value sort of still holds, and you can throw them in a trade and move on. But like, it's not always that good. You're not always going to have this top level talent. I mean, I was fooled too. I felt like Fields and Lawrence were no doubters, and lots of doubt right now. Lots of doubt.
I mean, yeah, there's lots of doubt surrounding it. I think with Lawrence, we all, for many reasons, love him as a prospect, don't want to give up on him. He'll have a multitude of years to have this opportunity to be successful, even if, let's say he busts. And again, guys, this is a cold water episode, okay? These aren't necessarily things that we fully believe in, but this is the reality of the facts and the narratives that are just not being talked about. But even if his time in Jacksonville ends, and let's say New York is still devoid of quarterback, you bet your ass Trevor Lawrence is going to get a shot at that job. And all the confidence in the world is going to be kickstarted again, and they're going to go, we can do it. We can get the guy from college. We'll build him back up. But I mean, you named it. Jordan Love, Daniel Jones, Dwayne Haskins, Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, Trubisky, Goff, Wentz. Like, the list goes on and on. Guys that, and Goff's been all right, but a lot of guys that there was this incredible expectation for. Not nearly the expectation of Trevor Lawrence, by the way. Let's just put a nice tear break. I mean, Baker was clearly a favorite coming out of college, but he was not Trevor Lawrence.
No, but by the way, you mentioned Goff and you said, well, he's been pretty good. He was in an amazing system with amazing weapons around him. So, it's not like a quarterback is going to be great with like a shit team. We saw it with Tom Brady throughout his entire career. We would argue pretty successfully, just like Michael Jordan, that Tom Brady is the greatest of all time, right? Easy to argue. My guy.
I just keep slipping the note under the door. Yeah.
Hey, fold it in there. But listen, right? But if you go back and look at Tom Brady, it's like, oh, he had a down year the year before they got checks notes, Randy fucking Moss. And then, sets the record for passing touchdowns the year he has Randy Moss. That's weird. And then, he has a down year. And then back up again when he has Rob Gronkowski, the greatest tight end of all time.
Yes.
So there's situational, environmental things that help or hurt these quarterbacks, which is why I'm necessarily concerned about both Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence, not as players, but especially Justin Fields right now. My goodness, I am concerned for him, not about him.
Well, we should move to Justin Fields because he is next on this list. I do want to say that's very much the Tua Tagovailoa point of view for me. He got these weapons. Jalen Waddle was an excellent draft pick. Now they add Tyreek. You got all this athleticism. They add Chase Edmonds. They get this new coach that's very creative, and suddenly, whether it's a veil that's been pulled over our eyes or we're ready to buy into the potential, we go, well, fuck, this is the year. This has to be the year because everything is lined up properly. And it's the same argument with some of these guys. Some of these really talented players, Trey Lance for that matter. It's really hard to argue that they won't fire in fantasy wise. They won't fire as a fantasy asset in the league because it's too hard to argue the profile. And I think when you look at, again, like Miami, it's very hard to argue the profile that he'll be bad because it's like, well, if he's bad, he's just bad himself.
He's done.
Right? Because they gave him every other opportunity. Now, Justin.
Great coaching, great offensive line, and great weapons. What more do you want, dude?
That's exactly it. What I was going to